Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Firearms Training Central Radio. We've got a great show for you tonight, wherever you're listening to this. Might not be tonight, might be today, might be this morning. We have Chris Liles from South Carolina Gun School joining us from South Carolina. It's a great episode. Unfortunately, the audio quality kind of took a hit this episode. Whenever you're recording remotely, you got to be careful about sound, and this one wasn't working out that great. But I think, in spite of the audio quality, I think you'll enjoy this, especially if you're an instructor and you're looking for ways to increase your reach in the market. Chris and I have been working together for a while, and not super close, but we've bumped into each other a few times now. And the last time that we saw each other was at SHOT Show in 2020. It was both of our first time at SHOT Show, and so we talked a little bit about that, about the decision to go and making it happen, and what we gained out of it, and what we were also able to contribute. Also, we talk about networking and getting to know other people within the industry, other instructors, other people that we can work with in order to grow our own network and our own reach within the market. So I think it's going to be a good episode, and I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for listening. All right. Well, Chris, thank you for joining me for episode 12 of FTC Radio. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. This is, I was kind of hoping that maybe we could get together. I've been watching and listening to a lot of your podcasts, man. I think it's a great thing you're doing. So I appreciate you having me, man.
Wow, someone's listening. All right.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
All right. So I have a few questions for you about kind of more like the business side tonight. So you have been, why don't you fill me in real quick on your background as owner and lead instructor of South Carolina Gun School?
So yeah, I served in the Marine Corps and had that experience. And then when I got out, I knew I wanted to get more proficient and better with my firearms. I mean, I learned a lot being in the military, but the military is really mainly about the rifle. So I wanted to become more proficient with the pistol. So, I worked with other groups, Suarez International. I've done some work with Craig Sawyer. Came and went to Katie's event last year. So I try to get out and do as much as I can to stay, proficient in my trade. I'd like to get down with Michael Woodland with Weapons Munitions Tactical here in Columbia, and I want to be able to make myself better so I can better help all my students that come into the school.
Okay. So South Carolina Gun School, when did you start the company?
So the company was actually started by my buddy back in 2008. He's the one that started the company, and we met through a mutual friend in 2011, 2012. I found out he had the school, and I came in and took a class from him. He liked how I handled myself and was needing, another instructor at the time. So he offered me a position as an instructor. And I came in and started helping him teach. And then I got him to try. I was pushing him to offer more stuff because for the area that we're in, we're about the only ones that go as in depth as what we go with a lot of the stuff. And I knew we had a really good opportunity to offer more and be able to grow the business. And he works full time at GE. He's got a welding business on the side. So probably 2014, 2015, I was essentially managing the business, and I was getting ready to leave my job with one of the big cell phone carriers to open up my own business, and was going to partner with him to cover what he wasn't offering. And he finally just came to me, and we sat down and talked, and he was like, just buy the business, man. He's like, the business, you've been running it, you know the ins and outs, everybody. It's not something where I'm going to have to try to build it from the ground up. So 2017, I took and left my job and bought the business from him and started running it full time ever since.
Okay, so that kind of answers my question of how you came to be in that lead position. So you've been doing it for about 3 years now, and prior to you running this business, had you ever run another business before this?
No, this was, my first actual business that I ran myself. I think the management experience that I got while I was at it was Verizon is the company that I'd worked for, and I think a lot of the management experience I got there is one thing that kind of helped me out to be better prepared. But I kind of tell everybody, buying a business or starting a business is about like having a kid. You're never really prepared for it. You can do your best to prep for it, but I don't think you're ever really prepared for it. So, but no, I had no experience running a business, so there have been some bumps along the way from learning experiences just from stuff I didn't know.
So when you took over that position as kind of the owner, not kind of the owner, um, were you intimidated by the whole prospect of being in charge and running the whole show on both sides, doing most of the training and running the business as well?
Yeah, I didn't really have any intimidation. Um, More just I would think nervousness. Because it's for anybody, and not just in the gun industry. I think for anybody to step out and start their own business, there's some nerves that are going to be there because you're essentially cutting out a guaranteed paycheck. If you've had a 9 to 5 job. So that was a big thing. Especially from my family and stuff. I've got a 13-year-old, my wife, and everything. There were some nerves like because it was a big cut in pay. So there were more nerves than I think intimidation.
Yeah, one thing that I've kind of realized over time since I run a couple of businesses and hold down a full-time job, um, the more you take on, the more exciting and the more satisfying it is. But at the same time, there's just like this low level anxiety at all times. Sometimes you don't even really know why, you just know it's there and it's related to the business, but you're like, I'm forgetting something. I know I'm forgetting something. What am I forgetting? I don't know what I'm
Right.
forgetting.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And another thing for me was the job that I was in was becoming really really stressful. And what was funny is probably about a year into it, me and Mike were talking one day, and he looked at me and he was like, "Well, he's like, do you feel you're more stressed or less stressed, now than from where you were, a year ago?" And I kind of laughed, and at that time, and even now, I'm less stressed than what I was, but there's still that stress level there because you're a business owner. So everything about the business kind of relies on what steps you take to make the business better. So it's I don't think that stress ever goes away. It's just a different type of stress.
Yeah, and it's pointed towards a different aim. When you're working for somebody else, your goal is to make your boss happy. When you are working for yourself, your goal is to make your customer happy so that you can be successful, so that your business and your mission can be successful. And it's a different kind of stress, and sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less, but I think in general it feels better to be in that position as long as things are going all right. When they're going real bad, then I'm sure it doesn't feel
Believe me,
feel all that
I,
great.
I'm kind of still dealing with some of those bad moments, but you know, I kind of had the feeling there were going to be some bad moments with the type of industry that I'm in. So this was kind of expected, but really not to the level that it's gotten to.
Yeah. Yeah, you've been dealing with some issues with trying to get the county to not mess with your shooting range.
Yeah. So
And
yeah, and just I know I've talked about it a lot on my social media, and a matter of fact, before I went live with Carrie, I was going live to kind of a lot of people have been asking me about it, but yeah, it's mainly based around the zoning. The area that I'm in is zoned residential agriculture. And for a business to come in, it would either have to be rezoned or I would have to apply for a special permit. So I applied for the special permit. I was approved, but the opposition did have 30 days to file an appeal, and they filed the appeal, and we're waiting on that court date right now to get that in front of the judge. But everybody, my lawyer, the county lawyer, because the zoning board was listed um, in the appeal as well, so they had to get their lawyer involved. They're, fairly confident that there's no grounds for them to overturn it. But I just being the for them, it's a little bit different for me being the owner. I still have, that nervousness of that possibility of, them pulling my permit and me not being able to do it out here. But I will say I've met a gentleman here locally that does CWP classes, and he and I have actually talked about starting to partner up and offer classes together. He's got property that he's willing to work with me and allow me to continue to do classes just in case it doesn't go my way.
Yeah, I think that's the key to, you know, taking on the responsibility of being in charge is recognizing that when you first see a problem and it seems, kind of insurmountable, uh, there's opportunity there. And if you're consistent and you keep pushing forward, you will sort of generate that opportunity just by being ready for it, and being able to take advantage of it. So, I've been through that quite a bit with different, trying to partner with different people, or running into different obstacles. I find that if I continue to just keep pushing forward, usually the solution presents itself, and I'm more ready for it than if I just sit and simmer on how much I feel like I'm falling behind or getting screwed or whatever. Because that is a pretty good recipe for shutting yourself down.
And
Um,
that's kind of where I was at. Is, when I thought I was going to be in the clear. I really didn't think they would file an appeal, and the appeal came, and I was at a gun show, man. I had a booth set up at the gun show, and it was in the back of my mind, like, what am I gonna? I'm here promoting the business, and then I'm like, what am I gonna do if I don't, get this, make it through this appeal? And the guy behind me was selling guns, and I just got to talking to him about some of the guns, and then we got to talking and stuff, and we had some lulls in the crowd and everything, and that's how I found out he was an instructor and did CWP classes and had property. And I had kind of been wanting to start working with some of the other instructors in the area to show that there's more than just myself or them in the area, that everybody's got their own way of teaching, and it doesn't hurt to go to different schools. But a lot of them, man, are really just stingy. Like,
yeah, territorial
yeah, I
too.
mean,
Very.
it's like, well, I don't want you taking customers from my business. I'm like, I'm not trying to take customers from your business. I'm trying to give each of us customers and us work together. And so he was kind of on the same page where I was at, and we're starting to iron out a few things to where we can start offering a few classes together and see how everything goes.
Yeah, it seems like there are instructors, and I'm not going to say a lot of instructors because I really don't know if the number is a lot. I know I've run into these instructors personally, who kind of take it as a zero sum game. They don't approach it from a business standpoint. They approach it more from a "this is mine, not yours" standpoint, and in the long run, it really limits your ability to reach the market, and it limits your ability to take advantage of opportunities as they come along. Um, and we've worked in Denver with trying to get companies, all kinds of different two-way companies, to network with each other, and if nothing else, at least just get together for a beer. This guy owns a holster company and that guy owns our holster company. Well, at the minimum, we can hang out, talk about holsters. It doesn't have to be a formal business partnership, but we can look at each other as allies and not as enemies. And it's not just because it's the Second Amendment and we need to all support each other. To me, it seems like good business sense to to try to partner with other people rather than to stake your flag in the ground and not let anyone come near you. That's a good way to make sure nobody comes near you, customers or other
Right. Exactly.
businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so on
No, I'm
that,
sorry. Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say on that note, I've no, I met you online. I met you as a client about 2 years ago, and in that time, it seems to me that your network of people that you know and work with is growing. Um, in those, I don't know what your network was like before I met you, but since I've met you, you went to Kevin Dixie's Teach and Learn event in St. Louis, and I've seen you continue those partnerships and relationships with the people you've met there. Uh, we hung out at SHOT Show, and I saw you shaking hands and talking to a bunch of people, some of whom I knew and some of them I didn't know. And it seems like you are expanding your reach into the industry. Um, I want you to talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
if you don't
No, I
mind.
mean, yeah, before we met and, I had joined with you. Yeah, it was kind of that the little bit of learning curve there for me to being a, kind of an instructor and a business owner. And, I was really trying to grow just off of what I have around here. And a lot of people were, telling me, hey, you need to get out there more. That was why I started the YouTube page. We didn't have a YouTube page for the longest time, and that was kind of putting my foot out there more. Was starting the
Let me
yeah.
interrupt you with a question real quick. You're in Easley, South Carolina. How many people live in Easley?
I haven't really looked at the last numbers. Easley is a fairly big city. Plus, the county that I'm in is a fairly large county, and there's, this is one area being close to Greenville, South Carolina, that has really, really grown over the years because of how Greenville has grown. They're really trying to, they're trying to compete with places like Charlotte and Atlanta because that's what's 2 hours away from us. 2 hours to the north is Charlotte. 2 hours to the south is Atlanta. So
So maybe you're like easily your
kind of
area that you're in is kind of a maybe an emerging small city moving
honestly moving
towards
towards a big city. Yeah, I would.
bigger.
If just playing
Okay.
conservative and easily, I would have to say there's 250,000 people. So yeah,
Oh, that's a good
it's a
size.
good
That's very
size.
good size.
Um,
So that's your market. That's kind of your local reach.
right. Yeah, and I wanted. And I kind of sat back to myself and started thinking. What my goals were once I took this business, and really kind of focusing back on that. And I want people on the West Coast to go, oh, hey, I know South Carolina Gun School. They're a good place to go and train at. I'm not expecting people to come from the West Coast to train at my facility. Would that be great? Yes, but just to be able to get knowledge out to more than just what's here in South Carolina. And I will say Kevin's train and learn event really, really helped me with that because that was one area that I was pretty weak in, even though I was kind of in the technology side of the industry being in, but I was kind of weak with the social media stuff. And everybody that I talked to was like, that's where you need to put a lot of your focus because it was something that's always growing. And I kind of see it now because Instagram, that was one thing that was totally new to me. And his event really helped me be able to see what I needed to do, um, and how I needed to do it and everything. So, I tell people this a lot is, I really commend him for doing that and can't really tell him how much I appreciate him doing that. And I mean, it was you sharing it because I hadn't heard about it until you had shared it. And then I saw you had shared it and went in and looked at it. And I was like, this is something where, I need to start investing in myself. Cause at the time I was really just trying to push everything I could back into the business. And it was me kind of having to open my eyes and realize that well, I'm part of that business. I need to invest in myself to help invest in that business.
Right. One of the things that I really like about Instagram, and that's a stretch for me to say because in general, I'm not really built for loving social media. It's just not who I am. I use it and I understand how it's important. But one of the things that I do like about Instagram is how easy it is to stay in contact with your network of people that you know and have worked with or want to work with. There's something about the platform that makes it really easy to just have those quick conversations, those quick wave hello, and it's more meaningful than what the Facebook poke used to be. I don't know if you remember that, but used to be on Facebook, poke. I don't know what it is, and maybe I'm just looking at it from my own perspective, but I Instagram makes it easier, and I think part of it is the ability for you to just jump on and spend 2 minutes talking about what you're up to at that moment, and, it makes it easy to maintain those relationships, which I think after an event like, Kevin Dixie's event is really important because you're gonna meet all these people, and what other tools do you have to keep in contact? Email, that's kind of easy to ignore. Text messages, yeah, I mean it's a little bit better, but you're not seeing that person in front of you, once a week or once every few days like you do on Instagram. And so as a using it as a network, as a professional network, has been really helpful for me. And I've seen you on there a lot more since that event. And you just said that you just got off of a live with Carrie Sloan. And that's another thing, you can be doing a live and somebody can see you and say, hey, you mind if I jump on? Um, I was lucky enough to jump onto a live episode with Mike Sodini the other day when his co-host didn't show up for the live event. He was having technical troubles and he couldn't make it. And he's like, he's just reaching out, somebody help me, somebody please jump on here. This is too awkward. Um, so I think it's really powerful for that, and I've seen you really take advantage of that. And uh, I think there's a huge amount of value with maintaining those networks, throughout the year, and as time goes on, those relationships create opportunities for you and for the people that you are networking with.
Yeah, you're totally right, and yeah, that was my weakest area was really Instagram. I knew how to get in there and work with Facebook and stuff, but yeah, Instagram was something that was totally new to me because I'm kind of like you, man. If yeah, I'll be the first one to tell you if it wasn't if I didn't have my business, I probably wouldn't have social media.
Yeah.
But I see what an important piece it is to a business. And, I kind of feel bad if somebody, isn't using it for their business, but it's been a huge help for me, man, in getting the name out there and seeing, letting people see what all I have to offer. And again, Kevin's event and really, me going to SHOT Show was really, due to Kevin and even Adrian. I don't know if you remember
Oh yeah.
Adrian with, he would they were, really two vital pieces to push me to go to SHOT Show because I wasn't going to go. And, Kevin told me, and even, Adrian and I had talked about it because we stay in contact. And, you know, they were both like, if you want it to grow, man, you need to get out to SHOT Show and, network out there. And that was my goal. And, it was kind of funny because when I got done with SHOT Show and was back and everything, everybody's like, well, where's all your videos and your pictures and stuff? And that wasn't my goal to come into this. Yeah, I wanted to definitely video, Maj's gun community thing that he did. That was one thing I definitely wanted to video, and I'm very glad I was there for that. I mean, I can't tell him how much I appreciate him having stuff, having something like that. That's definitely something we need more of is stuff like those panels right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, the first time I went to any kind of event like that, I knew one person. And at this most recent event, uh, I'm talking about like the people on stage. I knew about half the people on the stage. And, I'm not the type of person who wants to just be friends with you just because you're on stage, but these are people who had made relationships with through different interactions. And I come to this event, and half of them are, or half the stage is full of people that I have been working with. And I was like, well, that's really exciting to see that the effort that I've put into this is paying off to some degree. Um, I can look up there at that stage and be like, I know I have this relationship with that person, I have this thing going with that person, and it's nice to see kind of face to face the fruits of your labor, I guess.
Yeah, there was even a I can't remember what her name is. She goes by High Caliber OC on Instagram. She and I have she found me through Instagram. She's out in California, and we've interacted a little bit through Instagram, but bumping into her and getting to meet her face to face and talk a little bit and everything, that was pretty cool right there. And I commend Kevin again because he helped introduce me to some really great people out at SHOT Show, and they're people that I'm slowly starting to work with on building a partnership to help us both become better businesses in the future. So it was Kevin and Adrian were a big push for me to go to that event, and I was lucky enough to kind of be in a spot financially where I could afford to go. And but I'm really glad I did. And that was, like I was saying earlier, a lot of people were mad because I didn't post a lot of pictures and have a lot of videos of the newest guns and stuff. And it's like I told them, I was like, I didn't go out there to really, because I'll be honest, man, I didn't really look that much at a lot of some of the newer guns because I was there to really network to help my business, and that's what I did, and I felt what I did and the time that I spent out there was well worth it.
Yeah, and I was kind of in the same boat. It was a lot of peer pressure that got me out there to SHOT Show. It's not easy for me to get away, and the timing was pretty bad too. Actually, I had my son broke his leg a couple of days before I
Oh man,
left. Um,
yeah, I remember you telling me about. Yeah, I
yeah,
remember you telling me about that. Yeah,
but it was really a very important time for me, and that peer pressure. I can see why now. The people who were telling me to be there were telling me that because it's not that this is the only opportunity, but it's one of the best opportunities for running into all the people that you'd want to run into. I got to hang out with a few other clients that I hadn't met face to face yet, and hear some of their concerns or their goals. Face to face, I was able to connect one instructor with was it Justin from Phoenix Ammo, and just make those connections, and I got a lot done in 48 hours. And there really is no substitute for the face to face. It's kind of like with what's your number one generator of new business is referrals from previous customers. That's a that's a human interaction, a human face-to-face interaction. It's not necessarily a billboard or an internet ad or something like that. There's really no good substitute for those face-to-face interactions, for those face-to-face meetings, shaking people's hands and looking them in the eye and building up those relationships. So, and I was glad to hang out with you too.
oh
'Cause
yeah, man. I was glad that you came, and I wasn't sure if you were going to be there, but yeah, I mean that was fun. I mean it was a blast, man. But I can see. I won't lie, for it being my first time, I did feel a little bit, kind of overwhelmed.
oh yeah, me too.
And, that that first freaking day, I ended up walking myself in a damn circle. So
Yeah.
I started at the proper booth and made my way all the way back around to the proper booth, and I just had to stop and stand there and laugh at myself, like, damn, I just walked in a circle trying to find my way out of here. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really good event. I definitely see the benefits of going. I'm already trying to start planning for next year. I'm hoping I can go next year and try to make some more connections and, be able to try to do some videos for people that are following me and subscribe to me and stuff to look at the new guns and have them out there for them and everything for ones that can't make it. Because, a lot of people were asking me, well, how did you get into SHOT Show? And I'm like, you got to be in the industry.
Yeah.
And that was really what surprised me is the vetting that I had to go through for them to verify that I'm in the industry and stuff. I was kind of surprised at how in depth they went with that. But I mean, I understand. It wasn't that I was upset about it or anything like that. I knew there would be some vetting. I just didn't think it was going to be as in depth as what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I jumped through a few hoops to get myself there, and kind of use a connection to bypass some of that trouble.
Hey,
I could have
if
got
you,
in on
hey, if it's there, use it, man. Ain't nothing
yeah,
wrong with that.
I definitely could have got in by myself, but it would have been way more expensive than having a friend help me out to get in. Um, and so, besides the networking thing, and besides using social media, what are some of the other what are some of the other lessons you've learned about marketing in the last couple of years?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not really sure where to even start with that, man. Yeah, that was a big, probably my biggest thing that I've kind of made mistakes on first starting out, and I've kind of grown over the years. But I mean, I would tell anybody with a business or starting a business, definitely start with social media because that's going to be about the most cheapest way for you to get some of the best advertisement. And one thing that helped me kind of better plan where I was going to market is when I have people come in and fill out their class registration, I've got a section on there where I ask them how they found out about me.
Oh, that reminds me. You have that questionnaire. You do your homework when it comes to customer feedback. And not a lot of instructors put in the effort. So, if you wouldn't mind, talk about that process that you go through with your students as they kind of wind down your
Yeah,
class.
I've actually got a survey, and it was something that Mike had really already had in place, and I just kind of took it and built on it a little bit from the experience I had in the wireless industry, being in management and everything. Because being in customer service, that's was the big thing now. Is I mean, you even get it now with fast food restaurants. Hey, there's a survey at the bottom of your receipt, but I like to get people's feedback on that. So yeah, there's a little survey that I have Mike had started it. I've expanded on it some so I can see how I'm doing. And I tell people I don't if you don't want to put your name on it, don't put your name on it. Here's where you can leave them and let them be anonymous. And I don't hold anything against anybody. Have I gotten bad feedback on some of their surveys? Yeah. A big thing I get told is I talk too much. So I've really tried to do a better job of sticking to my PowerPoint and try not to deviate too far off of that. I've made adjustments to how my classroom is set up off of feedback and stuff. Because for a while there, I had everybody in rows, and a lot of people were starting to give me feedback to try to put it more, my tables more in kind of a U shape to where everybody can see the TVs better, where I had it sitting. A lot of people complained about it. Now I've got a rolling TV stand that I use. So, no, I think everybody needs to get feedback from their customers because how are you how are you really going to know what's not right? All right, and I'm not sitting there saying you need to go and please every single customer because that's one thing I've learned through my experience is you're never going to please everybody. You've got to be able to take what feedback you're getting and find that middle ground to where you can try to hopefully please everybody. But that's one thing is I've definitely learned I'm not going to please everybody. And, there's probably some business I've lost because of that. But, I'm not going to sit here and bend over backwards just for, a small group of people. Now if it's somewhere I'm getting consistent
Y-
feedback from everybody, then yeah, I'm going to sit down and take a look at what I can do to make it better.
Right. So, on your feedback form, what are some of the questions that you ask that you typically do get good
A
feedback
lot
on?
of it is, you know, I'll tell you what, man. Give me 2 seconds, and I can actually grab that and have it in front of me. Better answer that. So yeah, like what was it? There's some of your basic questions like, was the instructor clear in presenting the material? Um, was the material sufficient to understand? Did the instructor give you enough time for notes and questions? The one I will say, the one question I get the biggest kind of goofy answers. Did At any time did the instructor make you feel uncomfortable? Because a lot of people look at me like, well, what do you have that in there for? And I'm like, well, I do have other instructors that you know I use. So if my classes get too big, I try to split it up, and I do have a few locations that I can use. And Mike has always been there for me, and Reggie and Ron both have been there to help me out when I have fairly large classes. And I want to know if they're really good guys, man. Everybody has great things to say about them, but I like to have that question there because eventually I want to be able to grow the business, and that's going to probably involve having some new instructors around.
So on your form, do you ask people how they heard about you?
Yes, yeah, that's the first question.
Okay.
Yeah, the very first question is, how did you hear about us?
What's the
Then it's
what's kind of the like break it up into the three top answers for that question?
Google, Facebook, and YouTube.
Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay. Well, that's good. That means you're getting that message out there successfully, because some people, they use those platforms and they're not really able to get that reach going.
Yeah, that's been my three biggest ones when I sit down and go through them at the end of the day. Is Google, Facebook, YouTube. The fourth one that's kind of starting to um, have a big run is referrals. So I even have a section on there for referrals, and I have them write the person's name down that referred them because I like to kind of reach back out to them, tell them thank you. I'll offer them a little bit of a discount on their next class and stuff like that. So I definitely like to reward them for putting the word out there for me.
Yeah, referrals are huge, and there are ways you can definitely leverage in-class time and materials to increase those referrals. One of them is, giving the student something to take with them that they can give to another person. Something bigger than a business card, something cheaper than a business card too, because business cards are expensive, over time. But if you can print off a flyer or something quick and easy.
It's funny you say that, man, because especially with my CWP classes, I've got a little brochure that I put in all the packets that kind of describes, it gives a little brief description because I use them at gun shows too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't go and buy brochure paper or anything like that. It's just regular old copy paper, and I'll take time out of the day and I'll sit out here and fold them.
Yep.
Like a couple of days before this last gun show I did, I was sitting out here. I've got a Roku plugged into the TV out here. I turn the TV on, watch TV, and I'll sit out here and I folded freaking 150 brochures.
Hey,
At the end, I'm sitting here looking at it like, damn, why am I not paying somebody to do this? But then it's like, oh yeah, I can't really pay somebody to do this. But I mean, it's kind of like you were talking about. At the end of the day, when I sat back and saw how many I actually passed out at the gun show, it felt gratifying to know, okay, it was well worth me sitting out here and folding 150 brochures.
right, right. And your CWP class, you kind of go above and beyond with your CWP class by filing the sled package. Is that correct?
No,
No.
so for us, they've actually changed that process for us.
Okay.
Um, they partnered with a company called Identigo. I don't know. Have you ever heard of them?
No, I
I'm not
haven't.
sure. Yeah, I've never really looked to see if they're kind of a national company or if it's just something local to South Carolina or the East Coast. But what Identigo does here in South Carolina is people that need to be fingerprinted, like teachers, doctors, lawyers, your truck drivers with hazmat credentials and stuff. They've got to be fingerprinted, background checks done. So that's what they do. So SLED being South Carolina Law Enforcement Division that handles the CWPs, They partnered with them. So now what's done is you come in, take the class, we fill out the paperwork. Then you, after the class is over, you go and set your appointment through the SLED website with Identigo, and they do your fingerprints electronically.
Oh, okay.
So see now with the electronic fingerprints, there's no question about them being accurate. Where the old way they would come in, we would fingerprint with the ink. If SLED didn't like the way they look, they would send them back, and then it's just longer year without your. We'd have to re-fingerprint you, send them back. They'd have to check them. If they still didn't like it, then they'd send them back again, and we'd have to re. It was that game of well, we don't like the way this looks because we sent them some one time, man, and they sent them back. And the bad thing is they don't tell us which finger it is. They just write bad fingerprints. So took the cards and took them down to the sheriff's office and had their guys look at them, and they're looking at me like, we don't know, man. They look good to us. So it was getting frustrating, and we have to meet with them every year, and that was a big thing we had been mentioning to them about a better way to do the fingerprints and all that stuff. So that's why they finally changed it and partnered with Identigo. And the plus side to that I've kind of got off sidetracked and long winded on. See what I tell you? They tell me I talk too much. But the good side to the new process is old turnaround time was about 90 to 100 days. The new turnaround time is somewhere between 4 to 5 weeks. And I've even heard some people have reached out to me 25, 30 days after the class saying they've already got their CWP.
Wow. All right. That's good.
So yeah, it's really sped up that turnaround time.
Yeah. Out where I live in El Paso County, they're still doing the old school fingerprints, but it is a deputy who does it at your concealed carry appointment. And I don't think that, I mean, I think they know if they screw it up, they'll do a new card. But, uh, well, it's not a deputy. I think it's a sheriff clerk, but it's a fingerprint clerk, somebody who does it all the time. So besides the gun show, what other local outreach do, if any? I know the gun show does take up a lot of time and energy, so it might be the only one you do, but is there anything else you do locally to get the word out about your company?
I've started getting this year. What I'm trying to do is start to get a little bit more involved with the community. What I'm getting ready to start doing is offering essentially like I guess you would say, a free self defense class to the community.
Mhm.
Which I'm not really going to teach like self defense stuff, but you've got a lot of people that don't want CWPs, and they still want to have a firearm to be able to protect themselves in their home. And for the state of South Carolina, there's areas in your vehicle where you can keep a gun for protection even without a CWP. So I'm kind of doing that so people that are in those situations where they don't want CWPs, but they still want it for protection, I can kind of help them understand, what a lot of the laws are around a firearm and using it for self defense. So they have a way to get out and learn that information, because most people don't really go and research that information. It's all right, I've got a gun, I'm going to protect myself. And then sometimes they make the wrong decisions because they don't fully understand what they needed to do in that situation.
Right. So you already have a workshop kind of along those lines, correct?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have the curriculum kind of already structured, and you could it wouldn't be a lot of effort for you to throw that class together for free, like once a year or once a quarter or once a half a year. um, I'll tell you what, free gets the local news media's attention. If you send out a press release saying you're doing a free public safety class, and you invite the press out to the class, that's a great way to get your name out there into the ether.
Well, I know you. That's like you and you were telling me about how you do y'all CWP stuff, and then I found out y'all do it for free, and I was kind of floored, man. Like, damn, how are y'all even surviving doing stuff like that? But once you talk to me about it and explain to me what you were doing, I see, how that's working for y'all, and I think that's great, man. I'll be honest, I would love to be able to offer the CWP classes for free, and I'm kind of almost leaning toward that just to try to help get the name out there. But I
Yeah.
will say I
Well,
am a lot cheaper than what most instructors are, because a lot of instructors are still charging the old price and doing things the old way here. You know, they're having you come
yeah.
in, they're ink fingerprinting you, they're filling out the packets and mailing everything in. But, you know, I kind of feel you're doing the people a disservice, because now they're having to wait. They're still having to wait 90 to 100 days, where if you do it the new way, they could possibly get it in 25 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't. I'm not going to sit here and call people out for that. You know, I've posted a few. I posted a YouTube video talking about the new process, but I did catch some backlash from it from instructors in the area, because they're like, well, you know, you're calling us out, and I'm like, I didn't call anybody out in the video. The reason I posted the video was so my people have a place to go and reference what they need to do when they leave the class in case somebody forgets. So the same way I'm walking you through it in the class and showing you is the same way it's done on the video. So that way they have, you know, a place to go and reference, you know, if they forget something or need to know where to go. I want people to get it as quickly as possible, you know, because to me, if you're coming in and you're ready to start carrying, I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't really think anybody should have to go through a class. Well, let me rephrase this. I don't think anybody should have to go through the length of the class that we have to put through. Um, but I do think if we were to come to a like constitutional carry type thing, I definitely think there should be at least a couple of hours spent making sure everybody knows how to handle the firearm, because that is one thing I do see with the CWP classes is a lot of the newer shooters like, okay, I just bought my first gun. This is going to be my first time shooting it. And it's trying to tell them that, trying to find a nice way to tell them, well, you know, maybe you're not quite ready to get a permit and start carrying, but it's hard to do that without making some people mad, and I've pissed some people off by telling them that. But I think, you know, when it comes to firearms, some things like that definitely need to be said.
Yeah, they need to be said. They need to be said to anybody, not just new shooters. When you see unsafe behavior, you know it is all of our responsibility to call that out. We actually, I knew an instructor who had a negligent discharge during his own class at a range, and I think he was somewhat surprised that we didn't want to work with him anymore after that. you know um and look, accidents can happen to anybody, but if you're behaving in a way that's inviting an accident, that's different. That's the way I like to put it is nobody is above an accident.
Yeah,
Nobody,
yeah,
I don't care who
nobody's
you
not. Yeah,
are, nobody is above.
and I tell people that all the time. It's how you, right, like you're saying, how you behave with it. Exactly.
If you think it's okay to ignore some of the rules because you're a quote expert, or because you know what you're doing, that's the kind of person that I'm not. I'm going to call you out on it, and I'm going to say, look, that's a bad idea. It's not safe, and I'm not going to hang around you if you're going to do that. And as a new shooter, hearing that's tough, because I think that there's a certain level of intimidation and fear, maybe with being in that situation, and then being told, hey, you're not ready, uh maybe confirms some of their, uh I don't know what to say, some of their predispositions to the whole encounter in the first place. But we need to be explaining to everybody, not just new shooters, that uh bad behavior should be called out no matter who it is, even if it's an instructor or even if it's a professional. I mean, I know when Travis Haley had that negligent discharge, there were a lot of people who were just trying to get him to admit that he messed up, and he didn't quite want to go that far.
And you know, I can kind of understand both sides of it. You know, but you know, I've made, well, I'm not going to sit here and say I've made mistakes like that, but I mean, we've all made mistakes, and like you said, accidents happen. But to deny it is one
Mm-hmm.
thing. You know, shit's going to happen. I mean, there's nothing you can do to stop it. You can just do your best to prepare and be the safest that you can possibly be. But yeah, I remember hearing about that, and you know,
Actually, we had a student in one of our classes, not our concealed carry class. It was a defensive pistol class, who had a very similar negligent discharge. Had his finger on the trigger guard and was attempting to manipulate the safety on the other side of the gun. And while he was doing that, because his hand was in that gripping motion to get more leverage, his finger went into the trigger guard and he pulled the trigger. But the way that we run our range, we don't tolerate any muzzles in unsafe directions. And so his gun was pointed in a safe direction and he fired around into the dirt in front of him, about 15, 20 feet in front of him. And we stopped and we kind of debriefed what exactly just happened and why it happened, and you know let him know that we're not going to ignore it, but we're also going to learn from it
right,
and use it as a teaching opportunity. Now, we've had other people in our classes who just aren't safe, and we've had to sit them down or ask them to leave the class because they refuse to integrate those safety rules. And that's the kind of situation where you're just going to have to say, listen, you're going to have to learn how to be safe with these before you can come out and shoot with other people. Um, but when you talk about pissing people off, it's going to piss a lot of people off if you have somebody in your class shoot themselves. And that's not good for business either. I mean, we're not talking about losing customers here. We're talking about building a business that is sustainable over time.
no, you're right, man. You're definitely right.
So what has been your this will kind of round it out for this evening. What has been the biggest surprise to you on the business side of this as you've been working? I know you've dealt with the range issues and running into basically neighbors who want to make your life a living hell. But beyond that, from a business point of view, what's been the biggest surprise to you since you took over the business and you've been running it yourself?
I kind of like what we were talking about earlier. How many instructors don't really want to try to, you know, work together, especially in this area. That was really what my biggest surprise was, because you know, like going to Kevin's event, you've got so many instructors out there and willing to work together. You know, that was my biggest surprise when I started reaching out to some of these people about possible partnerships. That, you know, some of the responses that I was getting, and some of them weren't even local. Like some of them are down, you know, like 2 hours away from me down in Columbia. And it was just that was my really biggest surprise. And you know, that kind of hit home for me when, you know, like Ken and stuff was talking at that train and learn event last year about how, you know, we've got to clean up ourselves. And I think that's one thing where, you know, everybody needs to, in this industry, needs to kind of start working together, because we're all fighting for the same thing here, and that's being able to keep the Second Amendment where it's at and be able to allow people to be able to protect themselves. Because, you know, do I think a church should have a group of people sitting around with guns in there? No, I don't. But it's the unfortunate world that we live in now, to where it's come to the point where we've got to have that. And yeah, that to me was really my real big surprise, is how many people, especially locally, and I mean some are even national, that, you know, don't want to try to partner and work together to help everybody become a better gun owner or gun handler.
Yeah, I think instructors, I don't know if instructors underestimate this, but I think of a lot of other people underestimate how important instructors are to maintaining our grip on our right to keep and bear arms, because our jobs are to educate and train and prepare people, but primarily it's to keep everybody responsible. And Pincus talks a lot about the difference between, or the relationship between rights and responsibilities. People who train are kind of, I don't, elite is not the right word. Let me think of another word. People who train are at one end of the bell curve of gun owners. They are on the end of the bell curve that understands what it means to be responsible with a gun. And as instructors, your job is to promote and build that responsibility within the gun owning community. And as that responsibility takes hold, then our rights themselves are strengthened by that. We don't strengthen our rights by running around on Facebook and posting memes about how important our gun rights are. Like, that doesn't do anything. But doing the work to educate people on what it takes to be safe and responsible with a gun, that does do something. Every time somebody goes from being an uneducated and irresponsible gun owner to an educated and responsible gun owner, that's a win for everybody. And as instructors, I think people underestimate how important that is within this industry. And so when I was at the Teach and Learn event with you and the other instructors, I'm looking around at a crowd of people who seem to really understand that and take that very seriously, and not just get into instructing just to make a few bucks on the side, or to assert your ideas about what the best way to draw a gun is from a holster. There's a higher purpose here, I
Oh yeah,
think.
most definitely. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because that was one thing that I was actually talking to um, Pincus about at SHOT Show, because I knew who he was as soon as I walked. I knew who a lot of those people were when I walked through the door for Argo's pre-release on his rifle. But I was fortunate enough to be able to stand there and talk with Pincus, and that was one of the things that we both talked about. Like, we're not in this to get rich. If it happens, hey, I'm not going to sit and complain about it. But I didn't get into this to get rich. I got into it because I saw the amount of education that really needs to be happening out there for everybody, and I want people to be better educated so
Yeah.
they can handle their handgun or rifle or shotgun or whatever it might be, safely and responsibly, and be able to know the correct way to defend themselves when it comes down to it.
And even though Pincus dresses like he's rich, I'm pretty sure he's not rich. For how hard that guy works, if he were working in any other industry, he would be rich. That guy works incredibly hard, but he has a passion for this industry. He has a passion for teaching. He has a passion for building businesses and making people successful, and he has a passion even for activism and the work he's doing with the NRA. And he is definitely one of my role models when it comes to working with other people, because he will be the first guy to disagree with you to your face about anything you say that he doesn't agree with. But it is not personal. It's not a pissing contest. It's purely trying to get to the truth. And if you can prove him wrong, he'll take it right on the chin and he will change his mind. And if you can't prove him wrong, he's going to keep arguing with you about it until somebody feels like they've reached the truth. And I think as instructors, I think that's a really good model for instructors to look at as how we deal with people professionally. You know, what is our goal? Our goal is to get to the truth and to teach that to students. And however we got to do that, if we can work together to do it, that's better than fighting or shutting down or isolating.
No, I totally agree with you, man. Totally agree with you on that one. I mean, yeah, I'm hoping that, because he and I kind of talked afterwards through messaging and stuff, and I'm hoping to hopefully work and have him come out and teach a class or two out here. So,
Yeah, you,
and
you
there,
better get him on the calendar for 2022 right now. that
I know,
guy,
right? I
that guy,
know,
I have never met anyone so busy in my life.
I know, because I bumped into him. Was it Thursday? I think it might have been Thursday. I can't remember what day it was at SHOT Show. And I mean, I bumped into him at one spot, and then I was going down to another spot, and there he was. And I did, I goofed with him. I'm like, "Are you following me?" But I'm just like, "Damn, this man has been." I'm sitting here thinking, like, I would love to see a step counter on this man today. I mean, it
Oh
was
my
like he
god.
was everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, he is everywhere, and he's everywhere at once too, it seems like, for sure. So, all right, Chris, well, I'm going to wrap this up. We hit just about an hour. Probably be a little less than an hour after I edit out some of the dropped parts, but we'll get a good product together here by the time we're done. Thank you for joining us. Do you have any parting shots before we go through how to contact you?
No, man. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you having me on, man, and let me kind of talk and stuff. And I know I got a little long winded on some stuff, but I appreciate you having me on, man. I've been listening to your stuff, and I was kind of hoping I would be able to get on here and talk a little bit. So much appreciated, man. And the biggest thing I have for everybody out there is if you're listening to this and you own firearms and you haven't taken any training, please go somewhere. I'm sure there is somebody near you where you can go and take some training. And if you're an instructor out there listening to this and you're not investing in yourself to take training and make yourself better, then you can get mad at me if you want. You're doing a disservice to yourself and you're doing a disservice to your customers and your students that come in there. So I hope everybody gets out and trains.
Absolutely. In fact, next Thursday night, I am taking my first low light pistol class. I'm pretty excited about that, actually. And I'll be using a brand new Polymer 80 pistol to do it with. So I'm also excited about that. So yeah, I'm on board with you. Get out there and get some training. If you have gotten training, how long has it been since your last class? Because this is a lifetime commitment. And so if it's been a year or more since your last class, it's time to re-up at least a year, if not less than that. So all right, people can find you on Instagram at _SCGS. Is that right?
That is right. Twitter as well, the same way. Facebook is SC Gun School, and YouTube you can just search South Carolina Gun School, no spaces, all words together, and you'll be able to find our YouTube page as well.
Hopefully somebody from South Carolina is listening because you have a video on your channel about the South Carolina permit process. Am I correct? Yes. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for listening. And Chris, thank you for joining me tonight. It's late on your end. This is the second late night podcast I've done with an East Coast guest. I don't know why you East Coasters signed up for the late night podcast, but it's okay with me because it's not late for me yet. But
I'm yeah, no, it doesn't bother me. I'm usually up this late. I don't know. Don't really get too many hours of sleep. I'm usually up this late, so it really didn't bother me. Plus, it kind of lets me get into a quiet place, and I've been able to spend time with the family and stuff because my wife, she's a nurse, so she works pretty late, so gives me a little bit of an opportunity to spend time with them.
oh, good, good. My wife is also a nurse and is working overnight shifts, which is why this podcast is starting as late as it is. So, all right, everybody, thank you for listening, and catch us on our next episode, which I don't have anyone scheduled yet, but I am going to try to get Adrian Arnold on for the next episode 13. So stay tuned for
That'll be
that
great,
on the
man.
next show, and thank you. All right. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you for listening to episode 13 of FTC Radio. Appreciate you coming out and listening to us tonight or today or this morning or yesterday. Go ahead and subscribe on SoundCloud, on YouTube, on Gunstreamer, wherever you found us. Please do subscribe, hit the like button. We really do appreciate it. And share this with your friends if you'd enjoyed it. This is episode 13, so there are 12 other episodes. If you haven't listened to them, please go back and give them a shot and see what you think. We appreciate you listening to us. Go check out firearmstrainingcentral.com to find instructors, to find classes, and to talk to us about how we can work together to grow your company if you are an instructor. And thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week.